The absolute is all there is. The absolute is all there is, has always been, and will always be. However, the absolute will apparently appear to arise as absolutely anything and everything and nothing that is apparently appearing to be happening. The absolute is not happening to, by, for, and from anybody. The absolute is not happening to, by, for, and from nobody. Everything and no thing is inseparable and can only apparently appear to be whatever is happening to, by, for, and from nobody. And yet, if there apparently appears to be something happening to, by, for, and from somebody that thinks and believes that life can happen to somebody, that is not so. That is not exclusively so in whatever manner that a body mind believes, thinks, and all manner of thoughts that are conjured and are believed to be separately one's own thoughts that they can entertain in their own mind that is not claimed to be theirs. If it is claimed that there is a body mind of one's own mind, that it is possessed, it proclaims that it has and that it is a separate body, mind of one's own, that is conjuring separation. That is a representation of a body mind expressing in that manner that it believes insofar that it is separate from everybody and everything else. And it is convinced to believe that because it believes it has its own mind to think about itself. It believes that it knows, and it believes that it must know all about the knowing of all content of its own mind, a knowledge base of knowing. And it believes that it can collect and gather all knowledge and gain wisdom by that knowledge, but to, by, for, and from itself. The self-conjured self believes that it is separate, that it has its own mind and body to do with whatever it pleases, to live out its own life that it believes it is living. The self-conjured self believes it is living its own life. And the self-conjured self believes that it needs to know all about its own life that it is living to, by, for, and from itself. The self-conjured self believes that it was born, had its own beginning as a birth, and that the self-conjured self can prove and provide evidence that that is exclusively so, that their body and mind was born and had a beginning, via a birth certificate. And that birth certificate contains all the information and documentation to prove not only to itself, but to prove to all other conjured selves in agreement that an individual is separate from everybody and everything else, with its own birth name and birthright and documentation to prove that. As a result of that, it is believed to be exclusively that way, exclusively so, to, by, for, and from somebody, and a body mind that had a beginning when it was born and will have an end. And it believes that wholeheartedly as proof because it believes that its own body, because it casts a reflection in a mirror and apparently appears to be separate, a separate, exclusively real and physically solid body and mind of its own accord and volition, and of its own free will and choice, to believe that that is exclusively so, to, by, for, and from itself. And there are agreements that are made between conjured selves because the conjured self agrees based on its way of thinking. It is in the thinking that has been referred to, of course, as consciousness. But all there is not consciousness. There is only the Absolute. And the Absolute has been referred to as Brahman. And the Atman of Brahman is the temporary, apparent appearance of a human corporeal unit of local quality of consciousness energy form that is temporally temporary. When we say temporal, as in time, as in space and time, that is temporal, space and time, and temporarily, that is impermanent. The impermanence is a temporariness of appearances. These apparent appearances are not separate appearances. They only are thought to be separate appearances because the body mind that claims to be the witness of absolutely everything that it sees, hears, touches, feels, smells, tastes. The five gates, the five senses of the body mind, are believed to be exclusively claimed as one's own body mind, one's own life, one's own mind to think about its own life, to believe in whatever it chooses to believe, and be convinced about anything to, by, for, and from itself. It cannot understand that which is unknowable, that which is unreal, that which is unobservable. The self-conjured self will not accept that. The self-conjured self will never accept the fact that everything and no thing is inseparable. It believes that it can perceive to know whatever it believes it needs to know in order to reinforce that it is separate and unique and special and separate from every other body that it can see, every other body that it can see with its own eyes. It believes it has its own eyes to use, its own ears for hearing to use, all the five gates, the five senses. It believes those belong to itself. It believes wholeheartedly in itself, to, by, for, and from itself. Anything else outside of that is thought to be exclusively not so. What it believes to be exclusively so, and physically solid and real, is its own body mind that it claims to by, for, and from itself. When that has never been that way, that is not the case. It is simply an appearance that is coalescing, mixing, blending, not blended as a final blend. No, a constant blending, the activity of blending. It's an energetic movement that is timeless and boundless. It has no parameters. But it's an energetic movement that can be measured. Instrumentation has been manipulated to be believed to be the manner by which energy forms can be measured. Instrumentation. Therefore, in the sciences, the self-conjured self has taken upon itself to believe it can figure out and know the absolute, when that has never been the case. Anything that is conjured and thought to believe to be a certain way, this, that, or some other way, this way, that way, or some other way, are all dualities. Those are dualities of conditions. Dualities of conditions that absolutely anything that is thought to be a separate something must be known. It must be knowable. And the manner by which that is known or knowable is by labeling, categorizing, naming separate things. Subjectivity and objectivity. It wants to break down the absolute so it could figure it out. And it continues to do so because it believes it has to. The absolute does not require any figuring out. The absolute is already whole, complete, and perfect just as it is. Just as it apparently appears to be. Simply this, spacious aliveness, empty fullness. It has been referred to with these phrases used via the English language. The English language is just utterance of words. They have no meaning, reasons, or purposes behind them, and yet they are a form of communication, just as speech is used in various ways. And it is only understood to, by, for, and from other body minds that have learned and have conditioned themselves to learn a form of language, both the scribed and the spoken. Neither are necessary for the absolute to simply appear as it does, as absolutely everything and no thing inseparable. No words are necessary to describe that. Non-duality, Advaita Vedanta, Neo-Advaitin, the Neo-Advaitin as a resurgence of the Upanishads and the Gitas. These utterances of words are not necessary, since the absolute is already whole, complete, and perfect. And yet, these expressions that apparently appear to be to, by, for, and from body minds that speak in various languages regarding Advaita Vedanta, regarding the Upanishads, regarding the Gitas, all of these are simply stories. All of these are simply apparent appearances of stories and interpretations of that which self-conjured selves believe they are witnessing, that they know, that they can perceive, that they can cognize, that they can access higher levels of consciousness that other separate body minds do not have access to. None of that is so. None of that is true. None of that is separately, uniquely so. Exclusively. There are no exclusivities. Nothing is singled out. Everything and nothing is inseparable. Everything and nothing is infinitudinal complexification appearing as absolutely anything that is seen, that is heard, that is thought to be known, that is thought to be knowable, anything that is thought to be tasted, felt, heard, seen, the five senses. The five senses, it's a conjured construct. The self-conjured self conjures constructs and concepts and subjectivities and objectivities because it wants to know, it wants to figure out, it wants to be a special perceiver and knower and doer of that which it believes that it is a separate, unique, and special knower, doer, taster, feeler, and all the five senses it believes that are its own unique ways of expression, that it owns its own body and it owns its own mind. It believes that that is separate from everybody and everything else, all other human corporeal appearances. It believes it is separate from those. And yet in the agreements to, by, for, and from, and with other self-conjured selves are believing in the same fashion. They are believing and convinced to believe that they know similar thoughts and knowledge and the knowledge base that is shared, and that life that it's living is its own personal life, and it believes it is having personal experiences, exclusively so, exclusive personal experiences. It does not include, it does not understand impersonal. The self-conjured self takes absolutely everything it believes is happening to itself, to, by, for, and from itself. It takes that to be personal experiences, as separate experiences. My life, my experiences that I'm having, and you have your own experiences that are separate. You have your own unique thoughts about whatever you believe you are thinking about. You have your own mind to do that. You were born, you had a beginning, you had a birth, you have a birthright, you have a birth certificate to prove this. You are on the grid, you are part of society. We are part of society. This is a shared reality. Even if it is a dream, it's a shared dream. There's no meaning, reason, and purpose behind anybody's thoughts, actions, beliefs. That includes all spiritual beliefs, traditions, teachings, religions, spirituality, all of it. All of it does not matter. It never did. It was all conjured. Those were stories. Those were conjured stories. Fictitious stories. Fiction. Works of fiction. They're not exclusively fictitious. They're not exclusively true. All subjectivities and objectivities and dualities. All of those are not exclusively so. To, by, for, and from nobody. It never was any particular way. Life is expressed through that which appears to be a living entity of some type that has been identified. However, just because there's identification of something does not make that exclusively so. It was never exclusively anyway, any particular way, shape, or form. Nothing, everything and nothing is inseparable. It has always been that way and will always be that way. It only apparently appears to be the way that it is because of the conjuring and belief that their space and time were separate things to appear upon fixed positions, here and there, or not just here, maybe over there as well, and everywhere else. So this is my body-mind. I am here in this chair, seated in this chair with my own body. I have my own life to live, my own life to experience, with my own five senses, and everything that happens around me is separate from me, to, by, for, and from me. Everything else is separate. The self-conjured self believes that, is convinced that it is existing independently, to, by, for, and from itself, independently, self-managed, self-conscious, self-aware, self-realized. That is not exclusively so in that manner. It is not that way. To, by, for, and from nobody. It never has been that way. It is simply conjured. Because the conjuring helps the individual to feel as though it is separate and is special, and so that it can begin to rationalize, so they could begin to know that it is okay. That it is okay with whatever is happening to, by, for, and from itself. But nothing is happening to, by, for, and from anybody in the first place. It was never like that. It's not how it apparently appeared to be in space and time, simply because nobody is of space and time. When it was thought to be doing this action from itself, to, by, for, and from itself, it began to believe in itself that it was separate from everybody and everything else, that it had its own little infant body, helpless, innocent, that it needed to rely on care to, by, for, and from itself. It believed that at that point whereby it began to do this, and then it was eventually learned that these were hands connected to arms that belonged to my body. And as the mind of that body-mind developed, then it began to believe whatever it thought via the mental thought system. And that's how it became convinced in separation. That's a moment in time, a moment in space and time, to, by, for, and from that particular body-mind that believed it was beginning a life of its own at that point. And in space and time is normally a duration of about 18 months. Close to about 2 years when this begins to happen. My hands, my arms, my torso, my body, my head, my face, my mind, my brain, the me, the separate I. I know I exist because I have my own body. And I have learned how to manage my own body. I've learned how to manage my own life. I was helped. I was assisted. I had parents, or I had grandparents, or I had some parental figures that assisted me and helped me to figure out. I knew some information that I took upon my own mind. I took it aboard, so to speak, in my own mind, and I began to learn. I became conditioned to learn what I know. And what I know, I believe in. I'm convinced in whatever I believe in. You see? This is what apparently appears to have happened to, by, for, and from a self-conjured conjured self that believes in all of those beliefs. All of those conditions, everything that it was told, the language that it learned. The language that it learned was based on the thoughts and ideas of conditional experiences that it would require in order to exist in a world that it believed was filled with other separate people. And these other separate people, these others in that separation, is how and why separation began. The idea of separation. Yes, it has been described that, well, there is this constriction, this constricted feeling of being locked away in one's own body, and that you are a prisoner. All of that is just a misinterpretation. It's a mistake of what has never been happening. All of that was conjured in the mind to believe that, oh, well, there's this restrictive energy, and that's what I used to be, but I'm not that anymore because it fell away. So now I'm enlightened. Now I'm awakened. All spiritual stuff that doesn't even matter. Spiritual teachings that are sought. No, none of it ever mattered. It was all conjured. But not every conjured self can drop all of that. Because the moment that it drops it, then it says, oh, look at me. I'm enlightened now. I'm enlightened. I know I'm enlightened. Because in that knowing, that's proof. That's self-evidence. That proves that I'm enlightened. Because I followed a guru. I went to India. I went up in the Himalaya mountains. I found an ashram in India somewhere, local to India. I spent 7 years in Tibet, or 7 years in some Indian ashram, and then I followed all of the guidelines that my guru told me. My guru had specific techniques and spiritual teachings that he imparted to me because I didn't know any better. See, it's not in the knowing. It's never been in the knowing. It's never been in the doing. It's being. That does not require spiritual exercises to simply be and exist, because the personal presence was mistaken to be exclusively personal when it is both. It is both personal and impersonal. We are and we are not. The absolute is and it is not. It's a combination. Although it is perceived as a paradox, it is only perceived by a perceiver that there is a paradox when there is not. There are no exclusive paradoxes. The paradoxes are so and not so. They are both. It is never any particular way that is thought to be regarding an idea, a concept, a subject, an object, subjectivities and objectivities, exclusivities, separate ideas, separate subjects. All of that never mattered, and it never will. It never has. It is unnecessary. It's not required. Since everything and no thing is inseparable, and that is the absolute as infinitudinal complexification, nothing is required to do or know. There is no doing, no knowing required. For the absolute to appear as it absolutely appears with infinitudinal complexification beyond understanding. It is beyond all speech that's uttered. It's beyond all thoughts, all ideas, concepts, subjectivities, objectivities. It's beyond thinking. It's beyond expressions of body minds, to, by, for, and from body minds. The absolute is beyond all of that. It never mattered. It doesn't matter. It never will matter. An appearance of a local unit of quality of consciousness energy form that it happens to be humanly corporeal, believes in its own thoughts that it cognizes, its own ideas. It apprehends consciousness, it apprehends the mental thought system, and then it begins to conjure ideas to, by, for, and from itself, and all about itself, all about my life. Would you like to know a little bit more about my life? I can share that with you. I'm sure you have your story about your life, as I have a story about mine. See, it's in that kind of speech. It's that type of speech that has always been believed ever since so much time, so many years that have gone by. And in that conditioning that was thought to be the way that reality truly is, that although it's a dream reality, it is thought to be a shared reality to, by, for, and from a self-conjured self that's convinced that life is that way, that life is to be lived to, by, for, and from itself. It was never that way.
This is what's happening.
Это то, что происходит.
There is only what's happening.
И есть только то, что происходит.
There's nothing else.
Ничего больше нет.
What's happening is already complete.
То, что происходит, уже завершено.
It's whole.
Оно целостно.
Fulfilled.
Удовлетворено.
Without intention.
Без намерения.
Without need.
Без потребностей.
It is unconditional.
Оно безусловно.
And it's already free.
И оно уже свободно.
Within this freedom,
В рамках этой свободы,
which is limitless,
которая безгранична,
absolute,
абсолютно,
sometimes appears
иногда появляется
an experience
переживание,
that's limited,
которое ограничено,
that's separate,
которое отдельно.
the experience of not being free.
Это переживание того, что я не свободен.
That experience one normally calls I am or me.
Этот опыт мы обычно называем «я есть» или «я».
That experience that I am, or me, is cognized. It's thought about. The body-mind simply believes that it is separate from everybody and everything else, and that it exists independently to, by, for, and from every other body-mind that it sees with eyes that it believes are their own eyes, simply because the beliefs began and the conditioning began whereby a body-mind thought to be convinced, to believe, to, by, for, and from itself, that it is an independently individual, exclusively real, physically solid human being with its own free will and choice and its own body to claim as its own. And the belief of that is reinforced to, by, for, and from an agreement between what is believed to be more than just myself in the world. I believe I have my own body, my own mind, my own senses, my own knowledge base of what I believe I know, information that I believe that I'm always gathering from out in the world, drawing it into myself, into my mind, storing that information, and calling that knowledge, calling that experience, just calling it personal experience, experiences that I have had in my own life. It claims everything it comes in conscious contact with and what it believes it is coming in conscious contact with in space and time, not recognizing that it is not of space and time. The self-conjured self conjured that idea whilst it was learning, whilst the mind of a body mind that was thought to be its own, independently real, physically solid, and it was told that its own body has and possesses, can proclaim to possess its own birth name and birthright based on tangible physical evidence of documents. The documentation that is produced to, by, for, and from a self-conjured self that believes they are independently individual, physically real and solid, exclusively that way, exclusively real and solid, with free will and choice to decide how it is going to live its own life, using and accessing its own body that it believes belongs to themselves. This is my body, this is my life. My birth was my beginning, my end will be when I die. The I, the me, it identifies with a body mind, that it believes it's independently separate from everybody and everything else. And in such beliefs, it is conditioned to reinforce all ideas and concepts and subjectivities and objectivities that support exclusivity, that supports individuality, it supports separateness, supports all dualities, conditions of a life it believes it is existing upon, in space and time, upon coordinates. It believes that there are separate coordinates to exist upon in space and time. It believes that it is always going to remain in space and time, but it cannot recognize how it is not of space and time and never has been of space and time. But in that way of thinking, utilizing, accessing consciousness, the mental thought system of the mind of a body mind is just that. Thoughts that are entertained and then believed, and then those beliefs become exclusively real to, by, for, and from an individual body mind that believes it is separate and unique and special and self-sustained, self-sufficient, self-maintained, self-regulated. There is where self-realization stems from, and this is how and why the guru began guruing and believing that there were other body minds that required to be taught how to exist, how to simply be. The beingness that's thought to be does not require effort. It is simply manifestation. It's just manifestation for no particular reason, meaning, or purpose. It is simply human corporeal units of local quality of consciousness energy forms, and these humanly corporeal forms are temporally temporary, manifesting and appearing along with absolutely everything else that is the absolute that arises as however it will arise of its own accord and volition ad infinitum, as infinitudinal complexification. The absolute is and it is not. Therefore, absolutely everything that appears as an appearance, as an apparent appearance, is the absolute appearing in whatever manner that may appear to arise. Absolutely everything. Absolutely everything and no thing is inseparable. There are no individual perceivers, knowers and perceivers regarding the absolute as it manifests. Absolutely everything that arises as manifestation. It is both temporal, it is both permanent and impermanent. It's real and unreal, observable and unobservable, knowable and unknowable. It is all of it. Everything's included. Absolutely everything is included. Nothing is singled out. No thing is singled out. There are not things that are separate and singled out. It has never been that way. It is only thought via a human corporeal unit of local quality of consciousness in space and time that believes they are separate from everybody and everything else, and that belief is reinforced via documentation that is referring to a birth certificate and a birth name and birthright. That particular body mind that conjures such ideas is supported by others that apparently appear to have been around in space and time prior to their birth, and that all human beings are born, and that all human beings had a beginning when they were born, and they will have an end when they die. They believe they're going to die because they only exclusively focus and maintain that particular exclusive way of thinking that I am an independent human being. They believe that, and I was born and that was the beginning of my life, overlooking such a very, very obvious and basic realization to point out what has always been the way that the absolute has always been and will always be and will always arise. However, it's going to arise. It's going to manifest in one of innumerable ways. That's infinitudinal complexification. It's unknowable. Nobody knows that. It's beyond space and time. Whilst a body mind believes, thinks, cognizes via consciousness, the mental thought system, whilst it is believed to be in space and time for an indeterminate duration of space and time, for an impermanent duration, but not exclusively impermanent. Both apparently appear to be intertwined. All manifestations, all appearances, regardless if they're humanly corporeal or if they're animalistically corporeal or with the insect kingdom, any other life form that is identified as a life form. It is in that way of thinking of identification that there are separate things to be identified, but there never were. They were simply sceneries of the absolute manifesting as however it will appear.
That experience of separation
Этот опыт отделенности
engenders the need of seeking.
порождает необходимость
the need of seeking was one of several different dualities whereby I need to seek what I believe I have yet to find that will allow me to feel in a particular way I believe that I need to feel. I need to go after, I need to find in a separate world that I approach. So in that separation, the self-conjured conjured self believes and thinks and cognizes and rationalizes that I'm living my life and I need to go out there into the world, which is separate from me, and everybody else is also just as separate as I am. And that if I don't take action and do something about, to, by, for, and from, and about myself in order to seek the best life that I could possibly live in a particular way. I believe that I need to live my life in a particular way. And so I'm going to seek that way. I'm going to look into spirituality. I'm going to try to find the answers in some books, or I might decide to take a visit and travel to India and seek out spiritual teachers, or I may go on the internet and surf the internet and see if there are any gurus that could tell me the best way that I could live my life. And if they can, then I will be a devotee. I will follow that guru, because I believe that the guru can tell me something about myself that I do not know or I'm not aware of. It begins with self-realization, of course. In the Upanishads and all the Gitas, it is mentioned regarding self-realization, that self-realization provides the recognition by a human corporeal unit of local quality consciousness energy form that is a body mind, but is not an independent body mind. It is not separate from everything and every other human corporeal body mind manifestation. It is all mingling, mixed. It's a mixture, it's coalesced, it's blended as the absolute. It is included. It is not excluded. All life forms are included. Life forms, when we say life forms, these are manifestations of life forms that have been identified that way by labeling and naming and categorizing. This naming, labeling, categorizing, identification, in that separateness, there is nothing to find. Simply because everything has always been already whole, complete, and perfect, just as it is, the absolute, spacious aliveness, empty fullness, timeless, boundless, energetic movements, freely jostling about in what apparently appears to be an infinite universe. And simply to utter these statements, to hold a satsang, to speak of non-duality, to speak of Advaita Vedanta, just because it is spoken does not make it exclusively so, because it is not. The Absolute is unknowable, and yet it is perfection, it is perfect, it is whole, it is complete, just as it always has been and always will be, not only just in space and time, but even beyond space and time. Therefore, to claim and proclaim that I am enlightened, or I am awakened now, because I was not quite awakened in the past before, but suddenly now I am. No, it has never been that way. If it is expressed via a body mind, whatever is expressed It has always been what it has always been prior to any thought that's entertained, any concept, any idea, any exclusivity, any subjective or objective concept, idea, thought, that which is explained or identified or defined via any language that's spoken, to simply manifest the manifestations that are mingling and mixing, coalescing, just as light and darkness are seamless. There is no dividing line between light and darkness. It's all complete, whole, perfect together. The Absolute is not only all light and all darknesses, all illuminations. It is the absolute everything and nothing, no thing ad infinitum. But it is both everything, no thinging, and no thing, everythinging. It is and it isn't simultaneously. It is real and unreal. It is observable and unobservable. It is knowable and unknowable. The Absolute is absolutely all infinitudinal complexifications, that which is appearing to arise as however it will appear to arise, and has always been that way and will always be that way. It is the Alpha and Omega. It's the beginning. And it's a beginning that had no beginning and an end that will never end. That is unknowable. That can never be apprehended as something, as a concept, as an idea that can be figured out via some teaching, some spiritual teaching, some form of knowing, some lesson to learn. All afterthoughts are identifications of something that is thought to be separate from everything and no thing that's inseparable already. Everything and no thing is inseparable already, so no matter what a body-mind proclaims to be or know, or the doer or the knower or the seer, there are no exclusive, separate knowers and doers of anything, because it was never necessary for that to be exclusively so. It is so and not so. The Absolute is so and not so. The Absolute is real and unreal. The Absolute is observable and observable. The Absolute is knowable and unknowable. The Absolute is absolutely everything and no thing inseparable.
Потребность в поиске.
I am and seeking are the same thing.
Я есть и поиск – это одно и то же.
As long as there's an individual, there's seeking.
Пока есть индивид, есть поиск.
The seeker is the sought. Whatever can be perceived is not what's perceiving. There are no separate perceivers to be found in space and time upon separate places, separate coordinates in space and time. There is neither a here and there is neither a there. There is both here and there, but not as fixed positions in space and time. There is everywhereness. That is not knowable. How can there be everywhereness everywhere throughout the infinite universe? Nobody can ever know that. That is unknowable. But it's not exclusively unknowable. There's both that which is knowable and unknowable. We are and we are not. The Absolute is and it is not. simultaneously including absolutely everything. Therefore, everything and no thing is inseparable. Ad infinitum.
The seeking energy is what creates religion.
Энергия поиска – это то, что создает религию.
Seeking energy is hope.
А энергия поиска – это надежда.
It will fulfill itself or try to through food,
Она будет пытаться удовлетворять себя
Sex.
посредством еды, секса,
money.
денег.
Basically, the energy is a contraction in the body.
В принципе, эта энергия – это некое сокращение внутри тела.
That energetic contraction is saying, not this,
И это энергичное сокращение как бы говорит не это,
but what's next.
а что там дальше.
It's always looking for what's next.
Она постоянно ищет что-то еще.
The self-conjured conjured self believes in what's next because it believes it exclusively exists in space and time, but does not comprehend that which is not of space and time. The self-conjured conjured self believes it has a mind of its own, a body of its own, a life of its own, and it believes that its own beginning was in time, in space and time, because it was born in space and time. It doesn't understand not of space and time. Because all energetic movements, all energy is freely jostling, freely oscillating and moving about upon innumerable frequencies, but not separate frequencies. Frequencies of resonance are blended with the absolute. Absolutely blended. There is no separation. There are no separate energetic movements of human corporeal manifestations. It simply apparently appears to be that way. In its manifestation, impermanence, the Maya, the impermanence, has been referred to in the Gitas, in the Upanishads. Nothing is inseparable. Everything and no thing is inseparable.
And what's next is the hope of a better experience.
И вот это вот, что дальше, это надежда на лучший опыт.
There was never a yesterday, there is no past, there never was a past, and there never will be a future. And the present is thought to be now, but that's not even so exclusively so. It's not that way. Space and time are not exclusively spaces and times, pasts, the present time, and future times, separate timelines, all conjured ideas, concepts about space and time, to, by, for, and from a self-conjured self that believes it is independently existing, separate from everybody and everything else. It's not exclusively that way, or exclusively any other way that a self-conjured self believes, entertains thoughts and ideas about separation, about independence, about individuality, all dualities, whereby there is self-identification with an individual self that self-professes that it is separate from everybody and everything else. It's a unique individual person, and that the world and reality out there is not a dream reality, it's a real, substantial reality. It believes in spaces and times. It exists that way with all the dualities. It separates things that it sees in a reality that it believes is exclusively so. It does not understand not so, or unreal, or unobservable. It only believes in that which is observable, that which it believes is real, substantial, physically solid, to, by, for, and from itself. It's never been that way. It's just simply conjured. Is there anything to do about the absolute? No, never was. Is there anything to know about the absolute? No, there never was, never will be. The absolute is simply everything and no thing inseparable. It is infinitudinal complexification, timeless, boundless, without a beginning, without an end. The absolute apparently appears as infinitudinal complexification to, by, for, and from nobody, and for no apparent reason, meaning, and purpose other than of its own accord of volition, as whatever will arise to manifest as it does. And there will continue to be generations of other self-conjured conjure cells, groups of self-conjured conjure cells, that continue to believe in separation and individuality, in uniqueness and separateness, and that there are separate things in the world that need to be identified, and that there are activities that need to be done. I need to do something about my life because I'm living my own life, so I need to direct it. I need to plan my life. Life is simply living. It's a living, energetic movement through the manifestations of body minds. Life is not seized by individual, separate body minds that can claim that they are living their own lives with their own free will and choice. It only apparently appears to be that way, and that it's conjured, and so it believes it needs to make choices because it believes it has free will and choice to make choices. And so it will. It will decide. It will decide how it is going to live its own life because it believes it has a life to live of its own accord and volition, its own free will and choice, to do what it pleases with its own body, because it believes that. It believes in the ownership and the claiming and the proclamations of absolutely everything that is encountered. It believes it's encountering. It's encountering a separate world, a separate reality out there. It believes that my body and my mind, I'm in here, I'm in my body, I'm somehow in my body. I don't know how I am, but I can sense that I am. I'm sensing that I'm an individual, that I'm unique. And yet, I'm also detecting and noticing that there appears to be a world around me, to, by, for, and from myself. And that I need to know something about that. I need to figure it out. I need to find and locate and seek my meaning, reason, and purpose to exist. Because I believe there must be one. There must be a reason. There must be a purpose. There must be a reason why I think the way that I do. You're not thinking, you're not doing, you're not the knower of anything, you're not the doer of anything. Nothing needs to be done, nothing needs to be known. Everything's already whole, complete, and perfect just as it is. It does not require anybody to know that, to know about the absolute. That was never necessary and never will be necessary.
I am always looking for a better experience.
Я постоянно ищу какой-то лучший опыт.
Even if that means having a good experience and wanting to keep it.
Даже если это значит, что у меня уже есть какое-то хорошее переживание, но я хочу его удержать.
The problem for me,
Проблема для меня,
for the I am,
для я есть,
is that no experience lasts.
состоит в том, что никакой опыт не длится вечно.
So a better experience has within it the need to hold on to it and the fear of losing it.
То есть любое лучшее переживание хранит в себе потребность удерживать его или страх потерять.
And that's just the evidence of the fact that experience will not bridge the gap of separation.
И это доказательство того, что никакое переживание не поможет нам побороть разделенность.
In other words, the search is hopeless.
Иными словами, поиск безнадежен.
That doesn't mean that you can stop searching.
Но это не значит, что вы можете перестать искать.
You are not doing you.
Вы не делаете себя.
You, the experience I am, if there is a you there,
Вы, если вообще есть какой-то вы как это переживание «я есть»,
has absolutely no free will or choice.
не имеете вообще никакого свободы выбора или воли.
This appearance
Это видимость,
is absolute chaos,
абсолютный хаос.
has no order
Не
behind it.
имеет никакого порядка.
It appears ordered,
Оно кажется, что есть порядок,
but has no need to appear ordered.
An orderly appearance of the absolute would then imply the implications that the absolute contains within it particular conditions that are orderly, that everything fits into various places, various separate places, in that manner of speaking, in that way of thinking, in that way of rationalizing, in that manner of thinking that the absolute is not appearing chaotic, but is appearing in an orderly fashion. That absolutely everything is planned out, it's already been planned out, and that the future has yet to be encountered, and that space and time are all orderly in various places to, by, for, and from each separate individual human being that has ever been born, and that life is to, by, for, and from each individual human corporeal body mind in order to decide how to live a life that it believes is its own, and a body that it believes is its own, a mind to think about what I need to do to continue improving my life, because I believe I'm becoming a better person. I'm becoming more. I am evolving. This idea of evolving, I'm going into the future and I'm improving, I'm refining myself by seeking spiritual teachings. And that I believe that if I continue to do so, that I can not only improve, but I can acquire a refined existence. I can acquire a higher level of awareness, and by accessing that higher level of awareness, it will allow me to continue on even after this body that I believe is my own and this mind that I believe is my own will continue on. In that self-identification, I will recognize that after this body-mind passes away, and that this body-mind passes away into one of those higher realms that I am preparing my body and mind for. I am preparing for, to, by, for, and from myself to arrive eventually into an afterlife of some type. The self-conjured conjured self believes in an afterlife. It believes in the near-death experience. It believes in out-of-body experiences. It believes in those type of separate concepts of separation, that although I'm temporarily in this body that is just temporarily mine, my own, eventually I will leave this body and I will go into some other realm, some other dimension, some other type of existence. Self-conjured selves, many of them do believe that. And this is where the spiritual teachings are reinforced regarding reincarnation, regarding higher levels of awareness and higher states of beingness, that the energetic movement of non-local quality of consciousness energy can access other realms, other dimensions, other dreamlike states, other dream realities, platforms, other dreamlike types of realities that are similar to this type of reality, but are more refined in some way. I have yet to discover that, because I'm still seeking, and when I do believe that I have found what I've been looking for, then I will be satisfied and will no longer continue to seek. I may not know what that is, but I'm going to continue seeking anyway, because that's what I believe I need to do. See? The conjured self will continue to conjure all of these ideas of continuation, of extending its very existence, that believes it requires extensions beyond what it believes is an end, beyond its death. It knows, it recognizes, and it observes aging, entropy. And it knows it's not doing that to itself, to, by, for, and from itself, but yet these appearances, these apparent appearances of changes, facial features, bodily features, entropy, whereby the energetic manifestations of human corporealness apparently appear to diminish as time seemingly continues to go by, as days go by, as weeks go by, in a manner of speaking, to say they go by, that there's some type of continuum, and that continuum is the cause of the appearance of change. That is only thought to be that particular way. The body-mind is conditioned to believe and think in a particular way, accessing exclusive dualities that appear relevant to, by, for, and from that self-conjured self, that is thinking in terms of reincarnation, is thinking in terms of cycling, returning again upon this planet or some other Earth-like planet throughout the infinite universe, and that is part of some type of an evolutionary scale for souls or for spirits or for essences. It believes it has a soul of its own or an essence of its own, and that it's going to separately, eventually, remove itself in some way, or it's going to separate out of its own body somehow and become etheric. It believes in these spiritual teachings that there are other dimensions and higher realms more refined than this particular third dimensional construct. That this third dimensional construct of what apparently appears to be solid, physically real, exclusively that way, exclusively so. And in that exclusivity, there are other types of constructs or reality bases that operate in a similar fashion as this dreamlike reality, and also the sleeping dreamlike reality, whereby when a body-mind closes its eyes, there is still mindful activity, there are still thoughts entertained. The entertainment of thoughts is apparently appearing to be a type of default position, but that is only thought to be that way in that particular way when it is not. It is neither exclusively that way or exclusively not that way. It is both. Therefore, by simply recognizing that nothing needs to be recognized, nothing needs to be perceived, no thoughts need to be entertained, it's not a requirement, as a human corporeal manifestation that is blended with the Absolute already, always has been and always will be. So, there's nowhere to go. There's no particular point or position or coordinate in space and time to exist upon, because nobody's existing upon any exclusive coordinate in space and time. It only apparently appears to be that way. So traveling around the planet, using public transportation, using a vehicle, to get into a vehicle to go from point A to point B, it is all just every-awareness. It is thought to be that there are separate places, that a person, that an individual, that I can take my body and I could travel from here to over there. And I could look on a map and I could become familiar with the terrain, with the environment. Because I believe I'm on a planet, an Earth-like planet, and I believe I'm sharing my life and then sharing this dream, even if it is a dream, I'm sharing it with other separate people, other separate individual body minds that think the way that I do. And so in these agreements of thinking as I do, that there is a societal structure and I belong to it. I belong to the human race. I am part of the human race. And there are many different types of human corporeal body minds that appear. They manifest. And so we label them, we categorize them, we call them a particular race, such as perhaps Chinese, Oriental, Japanese, in certain parts of the planet. We separate the planet into various areas, and in that separation it has continuously been kept track of, because we track time, we track moments of space and time, because we believe that in those tracks, that's the way we can follow the manner by which a life can be led or a life can be lived, and that these are personal experiences, exclusively personal for me, and then you can have your personal experiences for you, to, by, for, and from you, to, by, for, and from each individual body mind that is thought to be existing separately, when it is not. It is not that way. It's not exclusively so that way. And yet, that infinitudinal complexification is not recognized by all human corporeal body minds that are thinking in a particular way. They are conjuring this idea of individuality, this identification of separateness, and of identification with a body mind, and then claiming a body mind as their own to do with whatever they please. They have this sense of individuality, this sense of uniqueness, specialness. And what reinforces that? Just by simply thinking about it. Thinking about oneself. Thinking about separation. Entertaining the idea of exclusivities. And all subjectivities and objectivities that surround exclusivity and individuality and separateness. It's too easy. It's far too easy for a subconjured conjured self to support that. Because it has always known that. It has learned it. It has spent what it believes many years in space and time to practice, to condition itself to practice, to think in their own unique way. They believe that they're thinking in their own unique way. I know that I live and exist and have a personal experiences because this is my life that I'm living. It is that convinced. And if a self-conscious self is convinced to that degree, it will continuously, till it can no longer utter speech via the body mind. If the mind becomes so clouded with entropy and some type of mental condition happens to that body mind, such as Alzheimer's, it forgets too easily of what it thinks it does. Then, in these labels of conditions of the mind that it believes is happening, it believes it's happening to, by, for, and from itself, that everything that's going on around itself, the self-conscious self believes everything that's going on in my life is happening to, by, for, and from me. I don't understand life in any other way other than the life that I believe I'm living. It's not the way that it is. It's never been that way. It apparently appears to be that way, and it can apparently appear to be this way, that way, or some other way, as a duality, as a separate way of being or existing or living. Existing, being, living in some particular way. I believe I have to do that because I just really don't know any other way how to live my life. But maybe if I keep seeking, if I keep looking for ways to improve myself, then perhaps maybe I'll find that answer that I'm looking for. Sometimes I can entertain this idea that I'm almost there, but I don't understand what that almost there means. I've entertained as many thoughts as I think I could ever entertain. Perhaps there are other thoughts that I can entertain that I have yet to entertain. So therefore, I must continue seeking them. Because I believe there must be something more to know. I don't know enough. And maybe if I know enough and I do enough to, by, for, and from myself, then maybe I can get somewhere. Maybe I can improve and prepare myself for the afterlife. Because that's what I hope. I hope that I continue to live on after this body-mind wears off. I can entertain the idea that this is just a container and that what is within it is a timeless, boundless, endless energy force. It's a non-local quality consciousness energy field. That's what I truly am. And that somehow continues. But the manner by which it continues, I cannot understand. I do not know. Simply because I believe I am still relegated to exist and manifest as I appear before a mirror. Although there's entropy, apparently appears to be happening, and aging. I believe that I'm aging. I'm getting old. I'm getting old? Am I doing that? Am I doing the aging to myself? To, by, for, and from myself? No, of course not. Of course not. Nobody ages to, by, for, and from themselves. Aging apparently appears to happen. Aging apparently appears to be equivalent to that which reduces the manifestation of a human corporeal form. Entropy apparently appears to be a reduction of that energy field that is manifesting temporarily in space and time. It's a diminishment. It is similar to artificial light. When a light is turned on in a room, the light that's turned on in a room, it illuminates the room. But where's the edge of that artificial light? Is there an edge to it as it radiates light out? No, it's blended. That artificial light is blended with absolutely everything else. That's infinitesimal complexification. How is that so? Scientists cannot figure that out and never will. It has a lot of theories about it, though. Sure, it'll continue to theorize. But there will never be a concrete, exclusive knowing about the absolute and how it can be and not be, how it is and is not, how it is so and it is not so, how it is real and unreal, all simultaneously. Absolutely all dualities and absolutely all non-dualities. It's all included. Everything and nothing is inseparable.
Нет никакой потребности казаться порядочным.
The experience of the individual is one that only can survive in the experience of order.
Переживание индивида может существовать только в рамках какого-то порядка.
It's trying through its experience, free will, and choice to control the appearance.
И он пытается при помощи своего опыта, при помощи свободной воли и выбора to control
Appearance, what's happening.
Контролировать только видимость, то есть то, что происходит.
That experience of I am and that need to control and all I've described
Это переживание «я есть», и эта потребность контролировать
is also absolute freedom,
это также является абсолютной свободой
is unconditional love,
и безусловной любовью.
appearing as need.
И эта безусловная любовь проявляется как потребность.
There's no suggestion here that that shouldn't be happening.
Мы не говорим сейчас тут, что так не должно происходить.
This sharing is not about changing anything.
Сейчас речь не о том, что что-то меняем,
It's not about finding anything.
и не о том, что нужно что-то найти.
At best, it uncovers or exposes the experience of being an individual as illusory.
В лучшем случае мы тут сейчас видим, что переживание своего человеческого «я», оно иллюзорно.
А что такое иллюзорное? Ну, что вы называете иллюзорным? Потому что вот классический пример, когда веревка кажется змеей, иллюзорным является змея.
What do you call illusory? Because in the classical example, when you have the rope, which appears to be the snake, the illusion here is the snake.
Right.
Да.
Но то, как вы говорите, вот, мне кажется, что иллюзорно это вообще все иллюзорно. Тогда что не иллюзорно?
But the way you are describing it, it seems to me it's like everything is an illusion. So what is not?
The only illusion
Единственная иллюзия
is that there's something looking out of those eyes.
– это то, что что-то смотрит вот из этих глаз.
Что не смотрит?
Nothing is looking.
Absolutely.
Да, безусловно.
Но если вы говорите про энергию поиска,
But if you're talking about the energy of the search,
то вот для меня кажется разумным отличать два поиска. Поиск абсолюта
for me it seems reasonable to distinguish between two types of seeking. First is the seeking of the absolute.
и второй это вот обычный житейский поиск, там то, что вы тоже упоминали,
And the second is this
деньги, секс,
search which we have in our daily life, like it's money, sex, success.
Same thing.
это
Это
одно
одно
и
и
то
то
же.
же.
It's all trying to fill a hole created through the experience of separation.
Это все пытается заполнить дыру, которая была создана вот этим вот переживанием отделенности.
The illusory experience of separation.
Иллюзорным переживанием отделенности.
There's no separation. There's already no separation.
Нет никакой разделенности, ее уже нет.
Indeed, since there has always been only non-separation, since absolutely everything and no thing is inseparable, the conjuring still continues. Since self cannot get out of self, the self conjures these ideas that it can. get out of itself. And it's going to do that eventually, and it looks forward to its own death. It believes that death is that separation that it's longed for. And once it apparently appears to happen to, by, for, and from itself, then it will believe that it will be absolutely liberated. That it wasn't quite liberated, but absolute liberation is the freedom of no longer believing that doing and knowing and manifesting a human corporeal body mind is no longer apparently appearing to be what's happening. The self-conjured self conjures such ideas because it believes in its own independence. It believes in its own existence, its very own existence. So it comes up with philosophies and spiritual teachings to maintain that idea of exclusivity, of individuality, of separateness. It conjures these ideas, thoughts, and holds on to them. It holds on to them, it self-identifies with them, the self-identification with itself. It comes up with conjurings of fictitious stories about itself too, by, for, and from itself. I was born, here's my story, I was born in such and such city, in such and such state, such and such place, a separate place, separate hospital. A very unique birth happened to me, and then I appeared to have a body mind of my own, and that my body mind was once in a womb, and that my mother that I was conceived from is my mother, and she will always be my maternal parent, and she's been my guardian. She has raised me since I was a baby, and that's how I've always been. And I've been growing. I've been gradually maturing. I've been learning about my own life. I've been learning about who I am. See? And I believe that I need to continue seeking that. I need to find my own way in life. In my life, I got to find a meaning, reason, purpose to, by, for, and from my life, so I can continue on and develop and improve and always seek the best experiences that I could ever experience. And that's what my life is all about. My life is all about doing and knowing all I can about what I believe I need to be doing with my life, to, by, for, and from myself and my own life. That is a reinforcement of separation. That is not necessary. All those conjurings of separateness are never necessary. They are all fictional stories that are conjured. Therefore, it is not necessary to speak of such things. Just simply be. That does not require doing. It does not require knowing and doing to simply be. There are no beings doing their own being, and they don't have to know about, to, by, for, and from their own self about being. No. It's already a natural blend. It always has been. Even prior to believing that a self-conjured self began to exist and live as an independent individual, separate person, separate from everybody and everything else. No, prior to that, it was already blending, coalesced. It was coalescing, blending, mixing with the Absolute all along. And just because it has temporarily manifested as a human corporeal form, that makes no difference, because it is temporarily appearing as a human corporeal form. It can appear as any other human corporeal form, perhaps. Nobody knows how and why that can be the case. Nobody knows if that can happen, or if that is what happens to a human corporeal form. Nobody truly knows and can prove that reincarnation is happening. These are simply thoughts that are entertained. These are spiritual teachings that have been handed down as hopes to lessen the feeling of separation in that sense whereby if I die, I will no longer ever exist again. And with that idea, the self-conjured self had to conjure something else. It had to conjure a belief, a religion, that its life will continue in some other way, that there is an afterlife of some kind. So it conjures up deities. It conjures up an orderly universe, getting back to referring in this satsang about orderliness. An ordered universe, an ordered infinite universe. It is apparently appearing to be chaotic, but not to, by, for, and from anybody. And it is not an orderly infinite universe, although the self-conjured self believes in separate orderliness, separate things that need to appear in a particular way. Otherwise, the way that everything appears could not appear unless it was orderly, unless there was some type of a pattern or some type of a divine order. In divinity, there are certain types of beings, supernal beings, that are greater than the human corporeal manifestation, that there's this creation story, and there's deities involved, and there's an angelic realm, there's a hierarchy, there are 4 orders of angels, there are the Ophanim, the Seraphim, the Nephilim, and the Cherubim, and then these teachings that we're referring to, this angelic realm, this hierarchy, is what might actually be encountered once the body-mind gives up the energy field that was animating that human corporeal manifestation of a body-mind. See, all of these conjurings, all these ideas were conjured as hope, as some type of existence to look forward to, so it conjures them. The self-conjured self comes up with these ideas and then writes books and then takes those ideas, turns them into spiritual teachings, turns them into religions regarding supernal deities, deities that have evolved, light beings. There's so many different types of stories that are conjured for hope to be supported. Because the body-mind, the self-conjured self, believes that it needs to not only know about it, but look forward to it as well, and plan. And plan for a type of existence, although it doesn't understand, it will still conjure these teachings, the spiritual teachings of preparedness, that it cannot even understand, but yet it hopes. It hopes that it is a particular way, as it is being taught by either the guru, the spiritual teacher, whatever supernal being or orders of beings, angelic realms, extraterrestrials, advanced races. All of these conjured ideas is conjured in hope, because it hopes to continue living on. It hopes that when it dies, that will not be the final end to, by, for, and from itself.
Мне кажется, пытаясь это понять, я могу понять только то, что понять это невозможно.
Trying to understand this, I can only understand that this is impossible to understand.
The concepts are simple. The concepts, I think, are simple.
Концепция, как я считаю, очень простая.
Но она как бы никуда не вписывается, потому что обычный человеческий ум, он создает концепции в ходе обычной деятельности.
But I don't think this concept sort of fits in anywhere because the ordinary human mind, it creates concepts. Well, in the process of just ordinary activities.
Yeah.
И концепции, вот, которые условно я называю запредельные или абсолютные, они на самом деле уже и не концепции, то есть это вообще непонятно что.
But these type of concepts, which I call sort of like the absolute concepts, they're not like even concepts. It's impossible.
It's pointing to something else.
Но они указывают на что-то еще.
It's pointing to what can't be known.
Они указывают на то, что не может быть познано.
Да, а обычные концепции, они как раз в них и происходит познание.
Yes, and ordinary concepts, it's through them that we learn.
Right. Yeah.
Да.
А здесь концепции
Aren't going to help.
А здесь концепции не помогут.
It couldn't possibly help.
Or, in other words, using the English language, of course, conjuring concepts is not necessary, never was necessary. All concepts, subjectivities, objectivities, teachings, concepts, ideas, learnings about the absolute and the way that it is, how everything is and is not, knowable and unknowable, real and unreal, observable and unobservable, all of that does not require a concept to be either simple or complicated, simplistic. Nobody knows that. Even the non-duality speaker there, the birth name and birthright of Jim Newman, even said that. I think concepts are basic. I think concepts are simple. The concepts regarding non-duality behind Advaita Vedanta, behind the Absolute, no. No. Not even holding a satsang is necessary. Therefore, although non-duality is spoken of in Advaita Vedanta and the resurgence referred to as Neo-Advaitins, the Neo-Advaita movement in modern times, these are the same utterances of teachings thousands and thousands of years ago, relegated to that area and region on the planet referred to as India. Does it matter? No. It never did matter because the Absolute is already whole, complete, and perfect. It's already set up. It always has been. It always will be. No matter what is spoken of in any language on this planet and throughout the infinite universe of all, the infinite universe of all human corporeal manifestations and energy forms, energy fields on all Earth-like planets throughout the infinite universe, it will never matter. It doesn't matter. Even if there's an appearance of an advanced race, it continues to advance. What is it advancing to? It doesn't need to advance to anything. What makes one race more superior than another? See, it's these distinctions and all these conjurings and all these ideas that are not necessary. Whatever is going to appear in whatever fashion it will appear, it will continue to appear. The Absolute appears in one of innumerable forms. The Absolute is infinitudinal complexification. Nobody knows about that. Absolutely everything and no thing is inseparable. No thing, everything, and everything, no thinging. Ad infinitum. No beginning and no end. The Absolute is absolutely everything that can be knowable and that which is also unknowable. It is both that which is knowable and unknowable, that which is and is not, that which is real and unreal, that which is observable and observable, that which is knowable and unknowable, ad infinitum. For no meaning, reason, and purpose, other than of its own accord of volition, ad infinitum, it will continue to apparently appear as infinitudinal complexification throughout the infinite universe, for nobody, to, by, for, and from nobody. There is no exclusivity, simply because everything and no thing is inseparable.
Они не могут, в принципе, помочь.
The message is, The one that wants help doesn't exist,
Потому что тут такое послание, что тот, кто хочет помощи, его не
is not
существует.
real.
Он нереален.
And what it's looking for, it will never find.
И он никогда не найдет то, чего ищет.
It's looking for the end of itself.
Он ищет как бы конца себя.
It wants to know it's not there.
Он хочет знать, что его нет.
Но конец индивидуума возможен? Или это тоже история или миф?
But is the end of the individual possible, or is this also a story or a myth?
Absolutely, it's a myth.
Безусловно, это миф.
The end of the individual is the revelation there never was one.
Конец индивида – это осознание того, что его никогда и не существовало, этого индивида.
Or in other words, the self cannot get out of the self because there is no self to get out of. So how is anybody going to be enlightened if they were not enlightened? How is anybody going to be liberated when they were never liberated? There's nobody to liberate. How can anyone be enlightened when enlightenment is not necessary for anybody to be enlightened, because there's nobody around to be enlightened? Nobody requires to be enlightened. Absolutely every human corporeal appearance is already not only enlightened and liberated. Liberation is not necessary for the Absolute to appear as it does, because absolutely everything is blending, coalescing, blending, mixing, oscillating, radically free energy, energetic movements, no beginning, no end, no parameters, no boundaries, timeless and boundless. That is the Absolute. Absolutely everything that manifests. And that, of course, includes all that is apparently appearing in space and time, simply because it's not of space and time. It is, and it is not. We are, and we are not. And it's not to, by, for, and from anybody, because there's nobody around. This is why it is said in these satsangs, in this way, in this particular way, using the English language, expressing in this manner, using the English language with these words, to simply point out that there is no self, there is no separation of anything. Absolutely everything and no thing is inseparable, ad infinitum. Simply this, empty fullness, spacious aliveness, always been this way, always will be this way, but not in any particular dual way, as dualities, as conditional ways. This, that, this way, that way, or some other way. No exclusivities. No separate concepts to entertain. No stories to tell. All of that's not necessary. And yet activities apparently appear to be happening to, by, for, and from body minds. It's just going to continue to be what apparently appears to be happening on an Earth-like planet. There's the story of Earth, and will continue to be conjured, these stories of Earth. And stories of Earth-like planets throughout the infinite universe, and it's going to continue on and on that way, and nobody knows if that will ever stop, or when it actually started. There was no beginning to all of this, to the Absolute, and there will be no end to the Absolute, and that is absolutely unknowable. Regardless if the astrophysicist conjures the idea of a finite universe, there is no finite universe anywhere to be found. There is simply infinitesimal classification. The infinite universe and the Absolute is absolutely everything and no thing. It's inseparable, ad infinitum, and that does not need to be known It does not need to be observed. There is no process that needs to be understood. There's no knowledge base that needs to be accessed or acquired. Nobody is simply being to, by, for, and from itself. They're just simply the apparent appearance of absolutely everything. Everything and no thing that's inseparable ad infinitum.
Nothing changes.
Ничто не меняется.
Nothing dies.
Ничто не умирает.
This is what was looked for all along.
Вот это как раз то, что как все время и искалось.
It was never separate.
И оно никогда не было отдельным.
Но это как бы вот подрывает все основы человеческой цивилизации.
But this sort of like undermines the whole foundation of human civilization.
Absolutely.
Безусловно.
Absolutely. Not really the whole foundation, that's a story.
Но это не то, что вообще все, весь фундамент, это некая история.
Because I think the suggestion is that the individual has had an effect on the civilization.
Потому что тут, кажется, продвигается мысль о том, что индивид как бы имел какой-то эффект на цивилизацию.
There is no individual.
Но нет никакого индивида.
There's no free will and choice.
И нет никакой свободы воли и выбора.
Но вот если рассматривать, например, науку,
But if you look at science,
там как раз
They say there's no individual too.
она тоже говорит, что нет никакого индивида.
но наука построена на концепции причинно-следственной связи.
But science is based on the concept of the cause and effect
Yeah.
correlation.
It's a story.
Да, это история.
И
And human civilization is a story.
И человеческая цивилизация, это тоже некая
They fit
история.
together.
И они вместе сочетаются.
но в науке мы можем предсказывать будущее.
Stories of Earth. Stories of self-conjured, conjured self, stories of bodies. It's all fictitious, anyway. See, of course, in the satsang, there are questioners questioning the absolute. No, it was never necessary. So the satsang is set up for those self-conjured, conscious selves to visit with a non-duality speaker, the Neo-Advaitin, as it was back when the Upanishads and the Gitas had representations as manifestations of gurus, spiritual teachers, spiritual leaders. It is the same as what is being witnessed with the Neo-Advaitin movement as it was thousands of years ago in India with the gurus guruing. Now it apparently appears that anybody can express as a guru, once did, and spoke, and shared information associated with the Absolute. What information associated with the Absolute? Absolutely anything. Absolutely everything and anything that's anything and everything, everything and no thing, anything, everything and no thing that is inseparable. All of it is conjured, and yet it is included, including all of the conjurings of any self-conjured, conjured self that believes it's separate from everybody and everything else. It's all expressed, it's all included within the Absolute. It manifests, it appears, disappears, reappears. Energy fields, manifesting as energy forms, constantly appearing, disappearing, and reappearing, as though There's some type of process, some type of cycling going on. What apparently appears to happen throughout the infinite universe without any particular meaning, reason, and purpose other than, however, absolutely everything continues to arise as it appears in one of innumerable, infinitudinal, complexified ways. Innumerable, the countenance is immeasurable of how the Absolute manifests as absolutely everything of the infinite universe. Infinitudinal complexification. Immeasurable information, immeasurable energy fields, immeasurable energy forms, energy fields, energy forms, manifestations, both permanent and impermanent. There's the apparent appearance of permanence, but there is no exclusive permanence. Nothing's exclusively permanent, and neither is anything exclusively impermanent. There is the appearance of impermanence as change in space and time, but that's just apparently appearing in space and time because absolutely everything is apparently appearing in space and time for an indeterminate duration, but not of space and time. There's an impermanent, indeterminate duration that a human corporeal manifestation appears temporarily so, but not exclusively so. Yes, it is also not so. It is both. So and not so, real and unreal, observable and observable, knowable and unknowable. To, by, for, and from nobody, for no apparent reason, meaning, and purpose other than the Absolute and its own accord and volition. However, the Absolute will arise as an infinite universe and as absolutely everything else that is and is not. Inseparable. Absolutely everything and no thing is inseparable.
То есть, если я отпущу руку,
But if we use the
предмет
science, we can predict the
Наука.
future. Like if I let go my hand right now, the subject will fall.
Probably.
наука
Скорее
говорит,
всего.
Probably.
Ну, скорее всего.
Yeah, it works most of the time.
Да, большую часть времени это так
But
работает.
there's no security, is there?
Но нет никакой как бы стопроцентной уверенности.
You might be hit with an atom bomb before it hits.
Возможно, вас атомная бомба разорвет, прежде чем он у вас вот из рук выпадет.
It's only the individual, as I spoke about at the beginning, that lives in a world where it has free will and choice and control.
Только индивид сам живет в таком, в неком мире, где у него есть контроль, свобода выбора и воли.
That dependence of knowing what's going to happen
И вот эта зависимость от того, что типа я знаю, что произойдет,
is the contracted energy in the body that's looking for security.
это такая вот как бы энергия в теле, которая ищет безопасность.
But you don't know.
Потому что вы не знаете.
You don't know.
Вы не знаете, на самом деле.
ну, строго говоря, да.
Well, strictly speaking, yes.
I know.
Я знаю.
And what's hidden by that experience of knowing is the freedom that is already everything.
И что скрывает это переживание вот того, что я знаю? Is the freedom, excuse me?
Freedom that is already everything.
Он скрывает ту свободу, которая уже является всем.
Я.
Yeah.
I am hide.
That's right.
Я есть прячется.
по-русски, да, расскажешь? Что ты думаешь по поводу концепции здесь и сейчас, концепции?
What do you think of this fashionable concept of the here and now?
Here and now. There's no here and no now.
Нет никакого здесь и сейчас.
А Экхарт Толле есть?
Does Eckhart Tolle exist?
Well, there's a body which
Yes.
people call Eckhart Tolle,
Тело, которое люди называют Экхартом Толле.
but there's nobody in there doing that.
Но там внутри никого нет, кто бы все это делал.
Года два назад я заинтересовался Адвайтой,
A couple of years ago, I started being interested in Advaita.
и первым моим учителем, которым я начал ходить, был Уэйн Ликермен.
The first teacher whom I started going to his talks was Wayne Wickerman.
И вот, как бы для меня вначале было что-то, как бы, его концепции были какие-то вот такие мягкие, человечные, да.
And for me, what was very attractive was that his concepts were sort of like very soft and human.
Потому что он не говорил, что там нету, вас нет. Он говорил,
Because he didn't say that you don't exist.
он говорил, что вы есть, но вы не автор, как он говорит, вы не автор своих действий.
Because he says that you exist, but you're not the author of your actions.
И, мне было это очень понравилась вот эта концепция.
And I really like this concept.
И на одном из недавних его сатсангов Мария мне порекомендовала посмотреть ваши видео.
And at one of his recent satsangs, Maria recommended that I see one of your videos.
И как только я начал смотреть их,
And when I started to watch them,
мне, поначалу все это очень казалось несколько устрашающим.
I thought at first that this was something really scary.
Yeah.
Когда говорят, что вас нет, это не для вас.
When you're told that you don't exist, this is not for you.
Вот. Но сейчас, когда я нахожусь здесь, первый раз лично,
But now that I'm here, I see you for the first time in person.
Yeah.
я чувствую себя, я чувствую энергию свободы.
I feel the energy of freedom.
Yeah.
И я понимаю как-то в глубине души, что что и Уэйн Ликермен, и вы просто разными способами говорите об одном, указываете на одно.
And I understand that both you and Wayne, you're both pointing at the same thing, only with different methods,
Okay.
in different ways.
I doubt that.
Я сомневаюсь в этом.
Почему?
Why?
I don't know Wayne. I don't know what he says.
Не знаком с Wayne, я не знаю, что он говорит.
But if he's saying you exist,
Но если он говорит, что вы существуете,
then I assume he has the experience of existing himself.
тогда я могу предположить, что у него самого есть опыт того, что я существую.
That for me is part of the dream.
А для меня это является частью сна.
Может, я просто неправильно передаю его концепции.
Maybe just I'm not talking about his concept correctly.
No, I think you are.
Не, мне кажется, что вы правильно.
What we're sharing here is truly radical.
То, о чем мы говорим, здесь оно действительно радикально.
And not in any special way, but it's very rare.
Ну, в том смысле, что это что-то очень редкое.
It just isn't said often.
Об этом просто редко кто говорит.
And not many want to hear it either.
И немногие хотят это слышать.
There's absolutely nothing on offer for the individual in these meetings.
На таких встречах индивиду вообще ничего не предлагается.
Мне кажется, это не так уж и редко говорится, потому что
I don't think that is rarely discussed.
вот учение буддизма, оно построено как раз на концепции анатта,
Because the
отсутствия я.
concept of Buddhism is built on the concept of anatta, on the absence of the I.
И вот когда одного известного учителя тибетского спрашивали, как если бы вы описали учение одной фразой,
And one Buddhist teacher was asked to describe his teaching with one phrase.
он ответил, что одной фразой это очень легко выразить, что на самом деле не существует ни меня, ни вас.
And he said that, okay, in one phrase, then I would say that in reality neither I nor you exist.
Вот, но чтобы понять это,
But in
нужно
order to
очень много всего
understand this,
сделать,
you need to
много
do
практик.
a lot of stuff, a lot of
Bullshit.
practice.
И в этом различие.
And that's the difference.
Well, because it's bullshit.
Потому что это фигня полная.
A lot of people call themselves non-dual or Advaita.
Очень многие люди называют себя адвайтистами или поклонниками недвойственности.
It's a very popular term.
Это очень популярный термин.
But you'll notice that some people, for Advaita means something you can find,
Но заметьте, что для некоторых слово адвайта это что-то, что можно найти.
and what's being shared here is Advaita, not two.
А здесь мы говорим о том, что адвайта это не два.
It's not a not two that can be brought about or lost.
И эта недвойственность, ее нельзя приобрести или потерять.
There is only not two.
Есть только недвойственность.
Searching for not two is an illusory experience that has no end in itself.
Поиск недвойственности – это иллюзорный опыт, который не имеет смысла.
The seeking for not two is not the cause of itself.
Поиск недвойственности не вызывает сам себя,
Nor will it be the end of itself.
и он не станет как бы окончанием самого себя.
It's powerless.
Он бессилен.
А вы можете назвать кого-нибудь, кто говорит примерно то же самое, что вы?
Can you name anyone who says about the same thing you do?
Tony Parsons is awesome.
Tony Parsons?
Да, мы как-то мечтали пригласить Тони Парсонса.
Yeah, we sort of like dreamed of inviting him,
Yeah.
Но он, по-моему, не захотел.
but I think that he didn't want to come.
Но одна
He's
книжка на
old.
русском есть.
He's old. He's quite old.
Он достаточно уже пожилой.
He's 86.
Ему 86 лет.
На русский перевели несколько книжек его предлагали.
Several books of his have been translated into Russian.
Yeah. Yeah.
А кто еще?
And who else?
I don't know anybody else.
Больше никого не знаю.
It doesn't matter. You're not
Не имеет
choosing.
значения. Вы не выбираете.
So you resonate
У вас возникает резонанс
with whoever you resonate with.
с тем, с кем у вас возникает резонанс.
Nobody chooses.
Никто не выбирает.
Every speaker is coming from, in a sense, a different place. Every speaker is coming from a different place.
Каждый спикер из какого-то другого места выступает.
That's why you resonate with some and not with others.
Именно поэтому у вас возникает резонанс с одним или с другим.
It doesn't matter.
Это не имеет значения.
Но у меня возникает резонанс в плане энергетического резонанса.
I have this energetic resonance.
Насколько я помню, со всеми учителями, которые называются учителями Адвайты.
I think with all the teachers who call themselves Advaita teachers.
Мне просто нравится кто-то больше, там, какие вещи он говорит, а кто-то меньше.
Just some things which people say I like more and some I like less.
Yeah.
Но все-таки, как бы, вот мы говорим, что нету индивидуума, но все-таки есть это тело. Да?
But also we're saying that there's no individual, but there is this body.
Yeah.
Да, очевидно.
It's not real.
Оно не реально,
It's not unreal.
оно нереально.
It's emptiness body.
Это пустота, выступающая как бы в виде тела.
В котором нет индивидуума.
In which there is no individual.
Well, there is the experience of the individual, but that's not an individual.
Но есть некое переживание вот индивида, того, что есть индивид, но это не индивид.
This appearance can appear as anything.
Эта видимость может видеться как все что угодно.
It has no need to be what it is.
У нее нет никакой необходимости быть чем-то.
It's absolutely free.
Она абсолютно свободна.
But there's no charge in it.
Но она ничем не заряжена.
There's no potential.
У нее нет потенциала.
It hasn't started,
Она как бы еще не начиналась
and it's never finished.
и никогда не заканчивается.
It's simply appearing.
Она просто является видимостью.
Вот в некоторых организмах есть иллюзия индивидуальности.
In some organisms, there is the illusion of individuality.
А в некоторых нет.
Humans.
Да.
Yeah.
And in some, there isn't.
Yeah.
И как бы
Apparently.
Очевидно.
отличаются ли они чем-то? Ну, вообще, как-то можно отличить эти два человеческих организма? Ну, кроме того, что где-то существует индивидуальность, где-то иллюзия индивидуальности, где-то не существует.
Is there any way, are they different in any way other than this, other than the fact that in one there is the feeling of individuality and in the other there isn't? Are they different in any other way?
Well, the individual there's an energetic experience to being an individual.
Вот это вот переживание того, что я индивид, это такое энергетическое переживание.
It's a contracted energy.
И это такая как бы сжатая энергия.
It's like a straitjacket.
То есть как будто человек в смирительной рубашке находится.
Trying to be good,
Пытается хорошо себя вести,
trying to get your life right,
пытается правильно жить,
trying to work out what this is, what the meaning is for you.
пытается понять, что это все такое, в чем смысл,
How to find enlightenment,
как найти просветление,
how to integrate the hate of your mother.
как интегрировать вот тот факт, что ненавидишь маму.
Those are all energies of the individual, the contracted energy of separation.
Это все вот энергия индивидуума, энергия вот этой как бы сжатой энергии.
When there's no one left, that doesn't happen.
А когда уже больше никого нет, то такого ничего не происходит.
The individual is looking at thoughts and feelings all the time.
Индивид постоянно смотрит на мысли и на чувства.
And the individual, with some thoughts, it's not okay with thoughts we have. Some thoughts aren't okay.
И индивиду не нравятся многие мысли, которые у него
Some
есть.
feelings aren't okay.
И многие чувства тоже.
It has a huge file cabinet
У него как бы есть такой вот куча файлов своих,
called My Life.
куча папок под названием «Моя жизнь».
And it takes thoughts
И он берет мысли
and feelings
и чувства
and files them all away so that it all fits in my life.
и кладет их все в какие-то папочки, чтобы все они вот вписывались в его жизнь.
And because some don't fit very well,
И потому что некоторые из них не очень хорошо вписываются,
because they're unacceptable,
потому что они неприемлемы.
it has a toolkit.
У него также есть такой колясчик с инструментами.
And so it'll saw bits off, it'll sand a little here, it'll make things fit over there, and try to form everything.
И поэтому он тут вот подпилит, там что-то подотрет, сделает так, чтобы все, в общем, туда вписывалось.
To make its inner life fit with its ideas about what this is about.
Чтобы сделать так, чтобы его внутренняя жизнь вписалась в его представление о том, вот, как оно все устроено.
With being good.
Чтобы вписываться в представление на хорошее.
And that stops happening.
И вот это все перестает происходить.
Соответственно, каким-то образом поведение меняется, да, этого организма.
So the behavior of the organism also changes.
Somewhat, I mean not too much.
Ну, немножко, но не очень.
There's relaxation in the body.
Больше расслабления в теле.
There's no one left that really cares about what's happening.
Там не осталось никого, кому действительно есть дело до того, что происходит.
That's not someone that doesn't care.
И это не то, что это кто-то, кому наплевать.
There's just no one left with a filing cabinet or tools.
Там же просто не осталось того, у которого все вот эти папочки и инструменты.
Все же мысли возникают в голове.
But thoughts still arise.
Absolutely. Thoughts and feelings.
Чувства, мысли.
It's a bit sleepy.
Но оно только все немного сонное.
It all gets a little sleepy. It's all. It doesn't have a lot of energy to it.
Как бы у них уже не так много энергии.
The file cabinet and the tools, a lot of energy.
Потому что вот все в этот ящик с файлами и коробочка с инструментами забирают очень много энергии.
Especially when it decides that a thought or feeling isn't okay.
Особенно если они вдруг решают, что какая-то мысль или чувство, что они нехорошие.
A lot of energy.
На это уходит очень много энергии.
And so, everything and no thing remains inseparable ad infinitum. Absolutely everything is not to, by, for, and from anybody. Never was, never will be.